just getting things set up here, so don't get too crazy about anything really at this point, because still getting the YouTube chat thing figured out, which I'm going to get figured out today. For the love of Christ and all that's holy, shut up. I'm not going to hold you the entire time I'm streaming, you little nerd. Okay, this thing says I'm live. Am I live? Yes. Okay, so I guess I can close that because we're here and this is working here. For the love of Pete, you need to calm. You need to calm down. Let's see. I give credit to people who got all this set up and figured out in advance, and it just works. What do I do then? Just open a browser window maybe? Pop, browser. It would be nice if they use the same one every time. Maybe they do. Maybe I just don't know. Height will go, 900 say. Maybe then it won't, don't have to stretch it out. We can just, yeah. I don't know why that has to do it that way. But that looks about right. Let's go with an even 1,000. Pull it up. Yeah, that looks fair. I think that looks fair. Bust open my morning sun drop. All right. Now I got no idea if check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Yeah, all right. That sounds better. That sounds much better. Yeah. Just get everything set up, getting going. That way, hopefully in the future, all this is just going to be working by default. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Yeah, all right. That sounds better. That sounds much better. All right. Streaming live on YouTube today. And going forward, today's video, today's streaming URL. There's that. You can message me on, obviously, Facebook Messenger. I'll still be able to get that, or on the YouTube chat, which is now in the stream video. And of course, let's bring up the Discord. Jump into the live streaming channel. Did I actually edit this one and set the? Yeah, I did. The whole 96 kilobits per second that Discord allows. Invites people. Invite as guest. I don't think everybody wants to just add that. And of course, if you want to join the voice chat, join the chat, and you can join me in my Discord. You're all welcome, regardless of subject. There's the Discord link. And Facebook, of course. Change preview. Yeah, give me that one. There we go. It's a win on the coding that time, Facebook. I'll grant you that one. It's a rare win for you. All right. So everything should be there. Post them both. See, I don't think I need that one up for that. I do not. Good to go. I was really able to strip down my screen for all of this. Out freaking standing. I'm a huge fan of that. All right, man. Trying to keep up with birthdays on Facebook, man. I don't know. It's luckily that you can just click a button for it, but a lot of people birthdays every day. All right, so we have been going over Project 2025. A lot of the people that I know didn't know anything about what was actually in it. They maybe heard a few stray things here and there. Pretty much everybody was kind of, none of us in the average atmosphere are like scholars or anything. So I'm not, holding it against anybody that they didn't know what was in Project 2025. That's absolutely fine. I do think that we need to discuss it, though, because it is obviously an important piece of work here. Because honestly, they, all right, well, that's fine. I'll just drag this down a little bit. That should be good for the voice. If there's problems with it, we'll figure it out later. People can let me know. I know Darren's let me know a couple times about some things that he perceived, and I was able to work on that and make it a little bit better experience, hopefully. So we're going to continue to work on that as we're building this thing up and getting it going. But with Project 2025, it's the think tank group, the Heritage Foundation, It's a work that they put together to that's basically a bunch of policies and legislation and actions that they want to see conservative presidents do. And we discovered on our first foray into this, right in the intro, that this group takes credit for another work that they did, just called the Mandate for Leadership. This one is just more of a continuation on that, the Conservative Promise. The initial one that they did was in 1981, and they bragged that in the 8 years of Reagan, he enacted over 60% of their suggestions. And what makes that really kind of wild is their suggestions were part of, they stated, a 20-volume work of over 3,000 pages. So, as you can imagine, 60% of that is probably a very sizable number of things. Had a lot of impact. What exactly those impacts are, hard to say for sure. I don't care to, just guess. I would have to go and find it and try to figure out exactly what those policies were. I'm sure somewhere it's listed. I may get that by the end of the week and post that into here. I will try to do that on the YouTube channel, and just kind of go over it real quick as we're doing it and provide the link, of course, down underneath it. If any of you want to read this at home, the link is right up above. I will try to add that to the YouTube situation underneath. All right. We did, in the intro, they had 4 key elements to their step-by-step plan, things that are basically embodied within the rest of the document with all their policies and legislation. Right now, we're just kind of going over those key elements and discussing the outlines that they're putting out there. You can watch, obviously, the first 2 videos if you want to see everything before this. I don't want to spend too much time going backwards. There's a lot of this to go over. Obviously, we're not going to be able to spend wheels of time on everything. And going forward, as we get into some of these things, I may skip certain areas to focus on things like the intelligence community, Department of State, Department of Defense. These are things that are very critical. We'll look at spots throughout Executive Office of the United States. One of the things I do want to illustrate again is that they point out that they were separating themselves from the 1798 Constitution and talking about the original Constitution, which are the Articles of Confederation, which is what the Confederacy was all about, which is why they wanted to separate from the United States and keep the slaves. Honestly, is what that was about. Had nothing to do with anything other than really that. Anybody who really thinks it was anything else is, either they're lying or they're completely fooling themselves. But yeah, so right in the beginning of the Heritage Foundation, as we're going through things, we see it's a very trying to raise the Confederacy through politics kind of situation, and that's a bit alarming. But maybe that's just something that one person threw in there. Let's hope maybe it's not the entire thing. I think a lot of my conservative friends and family would be alarmed to think that the Confederacy is trying to rise again through politics, and they would disagree with any kind of political narrative or drive that would elevate the Confederacy back to any kind of power. I know a lot of people think the Confederacy is dead, who do not live in the South, but if you do live in the South and you're aware at all of the politics of the time, and you've seen a lot of what's going on, I think you would agree that the Confederacy is still very much alive. A lot of the hate groups that fed off the Confederacy and the families who are involved with all of those groups, a lot of them are people who are very tied into the Confederate ideologies, shall we say. So the Confederacy is still very much alive. It still very much exists within our society. There are still people who would love to see the Confederacy rise again and enable the white Christian conservative state that kind of basically enslaves the minorities and takes rights away from other people, oppresses their ability to practice their religious beliefs, and enforces the the Christian belief on everybody else, because that is the correct and right way. As a Christian myself, and following the traditional doctrine of Christ, I would say that's not the right way. That is not what's illustrated in the book. There's compassion, there's recognition of other people and other cultures. I'm not going to get too deep into that, not right now anyway. Let's get started on this. On their third promise here, defending our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. The United States belongs to we the people. All government authority derives from the consent of the American people, and our nation's success derives from the character of its people. The American people's right to rule ourselves is the obverse of our duty. We cannot outsource to others our obligation to ensure the conditions that allow our families, local communities, churches, and synagogues, and neighborhoods to thrive. Interesting that we use churches and synagogues in this one when we've only ever talked about churches before, and we still neglect so many others. The buck stops with each of us, so each of us must have the freedom to pursue the good for ourselves and those entrusted to our care. All right, so far not terrible, right? To most Americans, this is common sense. But in Washington, D.C., and other centers of leftist power, like the media and the academy, this statement of basic civics is branded hate speech. It is not. The basic what you just said in the previous one is not at all hate speech. Nobody on the left would say that message itself is hate speech. This is again creating a narrative that people want you to believe. If you're a conservative, this is what they're trying to literally push in a lot of conservative media. They've got podcasters repeating it now. They've been pushing this narrative for a very long time. At least, I would say since the Tea Party, really that I'm aware of. But I was young at the time when I first encountered Tea Party in my early 20s. I can't say that it didn't exist before this. I'm not really familiar with politics when I was a teenager. I didn't really follow it too much back then. I don't think a lot of us do. But yeah, this is definitely a narrative that I've heard for over 20 years, is that, the left absolutely just hates religion. The left is not about religion. The left is absolutely religious. You have more atheists and spiritualists on the left side, but that's because it's more encompassing and compassionate toward those individuals. We on the left, most of the time, what you see is an acceptance of people's faith or lack thereof as their choices to live their life the way that they see fit. We don't believe in enforcing people to believe whatever our faiths are. We think that's inappropriate to do so, and contrast with the idea of free religion and not enforcing religion on people. The separation of church and state being a very, very important thing. We don't believe in a state religion or enforcing that. So it's not that the left has any issues with religion or that the left is not religious. We absolutely freaking are. We actually just have more religions in general involved, whereas the right has like Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors of Christianity. The left has all those flavors of Christianity, but we also are open to anybody else who wants to be in there and not be a member of that. Whereas on the right, typically, if you have people who are not Christian, say they're Buddhist, Muslim, whatever the case may be, it's typically something where they're more oriented toward the conservative agenda because of the financial aspects of it, because they're making quite a lot of personal income and they want to reduce their personal taxes. Prove me wrong on that. If you can, I would absolutely invite that, but that's what I'm seeing. Progressive elites speak in lofty terms of openness, progress. I just did. Expertise, cooperation, and globalization. But too often these terms are just rhetorical Trojan horses, concealing their true intentions, stripping we the people of our constitutional authority over our country's future. America's corporate and political elites do not believe in the ideals to which our nation is dedicated. Self-governance, the rule of law, and ordered liberty. America's corporate and political elites do not believe in the ideals to which our nation is dedicated. Consider who we just elected on the conservative side and who spent literally millions and millions of dollars, bought an entire social media platform just to push this, gave away literally $1 million a day to help push a candidate. You're talking about America's corporate and political elites, and the corporate and political elites strongly, and this is conjecture, obviously, you have people on all sorts of bands of the political spectrum who are in the corporate or political system that are elites. But we definitely saw folks like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and a lot of other folks during this last election cycle just spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars to kind of go against the rule of law. Obviously, you can't pay people to sign up, and they absolutely did. And unfortunately, they waited till right before the election, and the DOJ was just like, I don't know, it'd be really hard to prosecute somebody who's got all that money. It's gonna, like, the DOJ has become an absolute roasted bitch when it comes to this kind of stuff. They're not wielding their sword, they're not wielding their shield, and they're certainly not wielding their gavel in the trust of the American people as far as the prosecution portion goes. So if anybody who is upset with the DOJ for things of that nature, where they're just not taking care of the trash that they should be taking care of, whether it's political or in a business, they're not attacking the people who are clearly breaking the law just because they have a lot of money. I think everybody on every side of the political spectrum would absolutely agree that that's happening. We're all upset about that. So we need to be upset about it, whether it's somebody who's doing it on our side for our people or on the other side doing it for the other people. Regardless, that's just a dumb thing, and it's unacceptable. So we need to check that, whether it's on our side or not. They certainly do not trust the American people, and they disdain the Constitution's restrictions on their ambitions. Instead, they believe in a kind of 21st century Wilsonian order in which the enlightened, highly educated managerial elite run things rather than the humble, patriotic working families who make up the majority of what elites contemptuously call flyover country. This is a bit of a misnomer. It's not that anybody believes that your standard patriotic working families don't have the ability to have their opinions heard. This is the whole point of having the ability to elect your leadership, is that you can choose what politicians you want to help run the country and represent your voice. But the reason you choose these other individuals is because they have a better understanding of the workings and mechanics of government. So it's not about getting a highly educated elitist to do something for you. It's about, if I want my car fixed, I can get this, well-mannered, humble working family guy who doesn't know shit about cars to try to work on it and be like, well, I just want to give you the opportunity because I don't want to seem like I'm going for an elitist, educated mechanic over here. You got some wrenches and shit. Go to town. I'll give you your go. No, you're going to say, hey, this guy's got an opinion. That's cool. We will listen to his opinion. But at the same time, he has a mechanic. And instead of having him work on it, I'll take his opinion on which mechanic I should go to because he gets his shit fixed by other people. So that's what we're doing here. Is we're not saying that patriotic working families do not have a say. We're all patriotic working families, no matter what side we're on, no matter where we're from. But we elect people to work on our behalf. We elect people who have an understanding of, hopefully at least, of how government works, about how legislation works, how statutes work, how laws kind of trickle down from federal to state to county to city, how we interact with other cultures, and how it's important to create legislation that does not violate the constitutional freedoms that we are guaranteed, and to make sure that we are enacting legislation that does not infringe on anybody's rights or freedom or liberties. So yeah, this is just again something that's kind of trying to mentally condition people to say um, any elitist is obviously in the big city. Any elitist that's in the big city is just a liberal, even though, obviously Donald Trump, Elon Musk, um, any conservative elitist is also in the big city. Big cities are, yeah, they have more working class people that are liberal, but a lot of the elites, that's when you're seeing a lot of elites that are going to be either liberal or conservative. It's very mixed on that aspect, because if you're somebody who's very, very wealthy, it doesn't do you any good to be, trying to do business out of, some small town in the middle of nowhere in Missouri or something, where you have crap internet, you've got no access to, the larger markets. You just can't run your business from, the middle of nowhere. You have to be in places that are highly engaged, where you can put a headquarters, where you can get a lot of bodies in there. And you have to live in a place where they have access to a lot of the things that they're going to be interested in. Because, if you're working in small town government, one of the things that any of them are going to be working with right now is just talking about, like, how do you entice people to move to your county or town or whatever. And you have to acknowledge that one of the reasons why people move to larger communities, larger towns, is that they have more businesses and school options and entertainment options that people can frequent. If you live in a small town, like when gas was cheaper, it was wonderful to live in a small town and commute to those larger areas for work, or for entertainment purposes. It was fine, because you'd spend like $5 on gas to do it, maybe 10 at most. Nowadays, if you're traveling, 20 to 40 miles for something like that, it's going to cost you quite a bit more. And if you're doing it every single day for work, it's not acceptable. So most people have to move to those areas and live there versus living in a small town. So that's kind of where, those very wealthy people are at with this. If they have to hire a whole bunch of people to help them run their organizations, they're not going to be living in these really small towns in the middle of nowhere, in corn country or whatever the case may be. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the idea that people are saying that, and this is where I want to reach out to folks out in the country, is that I grew up in the country, man. And I've had the opportunity to live in some rather large cities like New Orleans. And I don't think most of the people there had any issues whatsoever with people from the country. None of the people I've met in my life in any big city really had any issue with somebody from the country. You'll have the occasional audacious person who will say, "Oh, these people who live in the country, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're so uneducated." I'm like, dude, I had a 140 plus IQ by the time I was out of high school, growing up in the middle of nowhere in the country. So obviously that's not true. But at the same time, you have people in the country who think that people who grow up in the city don't know shit about shit either. That's individualistic people who, yeah, they're loudmouth braggarts. You'll hear them well over all the other people who silently don't think those things. So we need to remember that just because somebody speaks loud does not mean they speak for everybody. You can count them as a representative because it angers you, but it's not right to do so. And it really takes away from the reality of the situation, which is that they don't represent the vast majority. So, please be aware of the fact that the vast majority of people are not those individuals. Again, this Wilsonian hubris, I'm not sure who they're talking about. Wilsonian. Let's check that out real quick, just so we can get context in this, what they're talking about. Wilsonian. Wilsonian is a foreign policy philosophy based on the ideas of U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, characterized by the following ideas: democracy. Wilson believed that democracy was the best way to avoid war and conflict. He thought that democracies were less likely to go to war because citizens participated in the governing process. Not wrong there, I would say. Believed in the right of self-determination for all people, which, again, so why are they using this as a derogatory term? Unless they've got their own definitions that they're adding into it. Believe that the League of Nations would help establish democratic institutions, international. So, principles for warfighting, delivering combat informations. Yeah, I really don't know what they're In sum, the best short definition of what it may be to be a Wilsonian is American security interests are well served by promoting liberal. So they're really just using it in a derogatory term to say it's a leftist thing. But if you look at Woodrow Wilson and a lot of the things that he did at the time, I think most people agree that Woodrow Wilson was very good for the United States and for the world in a lot of the things that he did and accomplished. Maybe they're saying that because it was popular and it worked out well, that everybody else is just trying to capitalize on the nature of that. Maybe that's where they're going with it. I don't know, but it seems a weird way to kind of throw a slight toward the left by saying that'd be like us, calling everything Reaganism when we're trying to be derogatory about it. Do I think Reagan did everything great? No, but at the same time, a lot of conservatives do like what Reagan did. So it just seems dumb to use that. People are definitely going to be like, well, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's not like an insult. So it is what it is, I guess. So the Wilsonian hubris has spread like a cancer through many of America's largest corporations, its public institutions, and its popular culture. And those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke, our so-called American corporations. Well, either they are or they aren't. I mean, I don't know why we had to throw so-called in there. I think any English teacher out there would be interested in, if you guys wanted to have some fun, please just do a big grammar check on some of this document and send it to them. Give them a grade on how well they wrote this, because as just a enthusiast of literature, I've seen quite a few mistakes already. Spink, shut up. I think one of my kids' cats is going into that time of the month. All right, so let's go on. Those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers. To a degree, I would not disagree with that. There's definitely a lot of American organizations who moved overseas and do care more about their investors. I would say both foreign and domestic investors than the American workers and customers. Absolutely, I would agree with that. They're making more money. Their goal will always be to increase their revenue for their stock performance, for their stock values, so that they can make lots and lots and lots of money and that their business can grow. I would say a big portion of that is the fault of the design of the stock market itself, and the fact that we live in a free capitalist society where inflation is the only way to continue to go up. We cannot at any point deflate without having bad dividends on the stock market and people pulling out and damaging businesses pretty severely, which of course then damages workers, jobs, and has an overall detriment to society, even though in a natural environment without something like that, I think deflation would just be natural correction. And ideally, you could profit quite clearly in your business without having to have ever increasing returns or increases on that margin of profit. Therefore, if you're making $300 billion this year, you make $300 billion next year. Yes, your profit didn't increase, but at the same time, it's a $300 net profit. That's still good. If you're making billions in net profit, I think you're still doing fine as a business. I don't think tying that to a stock and forcing people to try to increase it forever, knowing that birth rates are on the decline, knowing that automation is going to increase and take away jobs and therefore have another impact on pulling income out of the economy, it's a terrible idea. And unfortunately, I think the stock market is going to start seeing more and more of that as a reckoning in the future, especially as birth rates really, really become more impactful in the next 20 years. We'll see, I guess. Today, nearly every top-tier U.S. university president or Wall Street hedge fund manager has more in common with a socialist European head of state than with the parents at a high school football game in Waco, Texas. Well, yeah. Most of those people are all they're very well successful. Their focus is nominally on their business, whereas the average American family at a football game and anywhere, is more focused on their personal lives, taking care of their family, taking care of their friends, and being involved in social circles, um, keeping their head above water. I don't think comparing people who are wildly successful and have this crazy focus drive and a lot of times just natural gifts for whatever the case may be, and comparing them to your average American, that's kind of dumb. Um, it's not a realistic comparison. It's apples and oranges, and trying to make that seem like people are bad for that. That's goofy. Like, we don't look at Shakespeare and say, well, he's a bad guy because he writes really well and he doesn't have anything in common with these other folks over here who can't write well at all. It didn't make him a bad guy. It didn't necessarily make him elitist. It just, he was gifted. He used his gift. He didn't crap on everybody else for their inability to write the same way, as far as I know, anyway. I haven't seen a lot of documents from the era where they're like, fuck that Shakespeare guy, is always being an asshole to everybody. I don't think that's real. I don't think that, is the case. But in this situation, I do think it's apples and oranges. And I think making those comparisons again is trying to create this rift between people. And it goes back on a big thing that I keep trying to speak about, which is people. There is no line really between conservatives and Democrats, team blue, team red, whatever the case you want to be. There really isn't that much division, as people would like to say. A lot more people are moderate. A lot more people are, they do agree with a lot of things in the middle, if you really talk to them. So it's really, really important to get that out there and to understand that line is bullshit, that it's absolutely being drawn for you, and you're being told that you're on this side of it, they're on that side of it, and they don't like you, and you shouldn't like them because they don't like you, not because they're not good people, or for any other reason. It's all because they hate you and they're terrible people, and you need to keep your eye on them and keep them in check, and they think you're the worst. Anytime somebody's trying to tell you the character of what other people are to get you to dislike them, once again, that's a red flag. If somebody's telling you how to think about people or what other people think, or trying to create these divisions like this, it's an intentional conditioning metric. They want you to dislike them. We did this during the Soviet era, where we were in the Cold War, and we wanted everybody to think that anybody who was communist was a Soviet. Anybody who was a Soviet was a bad, evil person. Anybody who's Russian, regardless, anybody who is Russian or from one of those states just has to be an evil commie spy. I mean, we did it with the Japanese during the World War there, when we put the Japanese in internment camps. This isn't a new tactic. Mental conditioning and telling you who to hate and why to hate them, and giving you these breadcrumbs that you can kind of build off on. It's like mold, honestly. They're just going to drop some mold spores on these ideas and let you naturally kind of foster that mold and grow it. You think you're growing a garden of genuine thought, and it's really just this nasty mold. So anytime anybody's giving you these things, you really need to be aware of that, and you need to check that and go, okay, wait a minute. If you're going to tell me what these people are, who these people are, and why they think this way, and that I should hate them, but you're not giving me all of the information, you're neglecting the fact that a big portion of those elites that you keep mentioning are also conservatives. They are conservative voters. They donate, hundreds of millions of dollars every year to conservative ends. Obviously, we're creating a division and a narrative to try to get you to get behind what we want you to get behind, versus actually, talking about the issues that are really, really relevant and being honest, 100% honest with you about how that works out. If somebody really had your best interest at heart and really wanted to have a good conversation about everything and drive politics, they would be more honest about that kind of stuff and be like, okay, yeah, there's people that are conservative that are involved in this stuff. There's conservative elites that run colleges, because there's tons of conservative colleges out there as well. There's obviously people in business who are conservative elites, obviously, because one, you saw most of them representing themselves. Well, not most of them, several of them representing themselves. Just try to push Trump through. They were well open. They want cabinet positions, whatever the case may be. They want favors. The oil industry donated so much ridiculous money to him. I mean, obviously, it's there. It's just there. We don't need to get too into the weeds on it, but it's quite apparent. But under our Constitution, these folks are mere equals of the workers who shower after work instead of before. I would suggest before and after. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was especially doing rigorous work, I would shower in the morning, go to work, get all sweaty at work because it's a long, freaking arduous day. Most of us work hard. Even if you're in a suit and you're doing your business in an office that's air conditioned, you probably are doing enough stuff that you're walking around. You're probably sweating in deals. Maybe it's more emotionally provoked sweat. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's stress induced sweat versus labor intensive induced sweat. But you're sweating, so And when you're sleeping at night, you sweat in your sleep a lot of times. To a greater or lesser degree, depending on the individual. But I would recommend, showering before, when you wake up. One, it helps you wake up. Two, it's good for being clean. There's no sense in, you're getting sweaty in your sleep and then jumping into clothes and going, but I'm still clean from last night. You're not. You're just reducing things. So, before and after work, I would suggest. That's just me personally on a hygiene note. This is as it should and must be. Intellectual sophistication, advanced degrees, financial success, and all other markers of elite status have no bearing on a person's knowledge of the one thing most necessary for governance, what it means to live well. That knowledge is available to each of us, no matter how humble our backgrounds or how unpretentious our attainments. It is open to us to read in the book of human nature, to which we are all offered the key just by merit of our shared humanity. One of the great premises of American political life is that everyone who can read in that book must have a voice in deciding the course and fate of our republic. I just had a thought here. I just wanted to adjust. I just took my noise gate off my microphone on the software, so if you can hear more background noise, of course, again, let me know if it's bothersome. If it's not bothersome, who cares, right? Yeah, one of the great premises of American political life is that everyone who can read in that book must have a voice in deciding the course and fate of our republic. You absolutely do. That's the political system. That's the ability to elect your lawmakers and your representatives. I would argue that Citizens United, which was a widely partisan program that got pushed through during conservative era, if I'm not mistaken, that quashed a lot of the voices of the American people. It gave businesses even greater voice than they already had. I mean, businesses were the ones who were paying the lobbyists in D.C. The whole friggin' time. So they were already getting a massive voice in D.C. that nobody else, the American people, just didn't have. It's one reason why most people just did not like lobbyists. Not that there aren't lobbyists who are out there advocating for things that are of interest to the American public. Absolutely there are. But a huge portion of them are doing, they're advocating for businesses, for policies that will favor businesses and whatever they want. Or large organizations like churches and things like that, and trying to get things for them. So, we need to be obviously very, very clear, and we need to be on the same ground that's not what we're getting as far as a lot of this goes. We're getting lobbyists are terrible. Citizens United is also terrible in that it's taking away further voice of the American people and giving even more power and more voice to. And you saw it when we were doing the selection cycle when I don't know that Harris didn't do it. I just know that Donald Trump did do it because I did see it on the news that he was advocating specifically to wealthy businesses saying that if they give him all this money in these PACs and stuff, that he would do things for them. I mean, he straight out just literally said that at a speech at Mar-a-Lago to, I think it was the oil companies specifically in that one. And obviously, having Elon Musk, I think, had 3 different PACs that I'm aware of offhand that he spent millions and over $100 million into one, the America PAC, and then he had several other PACs on top of that that he didn't spend as much money in, but he did orient and did run and did spend millions at least in it. So that's where you're seeing where if you're upset about your voice not being heard as effectively, these are why, man, because PACs, which were really enabled by Citizens United and because of lobbyists, those are the ones who are diminishing the power of your voice. It's nothing more than that. You have the same power anybody else does, which is to vote as an individual. You can still do that. You can still write letters to your congressman. You can call them. Most people don't know that most government officials from a local level to a higher level have to publish their phone numbers and their contact information, like email, whatnot. That all has to be out there. They have to have most of them have web pages and staffers who are going to go through a lot of that to try to get the overall civil opinion and voice and kind of direct that. And they will also voice the dissent so that they can address those issues at will. So you have to make your voice heard, not just at the voting booth, but if you really have a lot to say, you can take those channels up. And I encourage it. C. Progressive policymakers and pundits in America either fail to understand this premise or intentionally reject it. They enthusiastically support supranational organizations like the United Nations and European Union, which are run and staffed almost entirely by people who share their values and are mostly insulated from the influence of national elections. Absolutely. Much of what I was just talking about. That's why they are eager for America to cite international treaties on everything from pharmaceutical patents to climate change to the rights of the child. And why those treaties invariably endorse policies that could never pass through the U.S. Congress. Like the progressive Woodrow Wilson a century ago, the woke left today seeks a world bound by global treaties they write in which they exercise dictatorial powers over all nations without being subject to democratic accountability. Not true at all. Any global treaties you write, you have to they have to fall within the constitutional and statutory legislation that we have enacted in our countries, and therefore also in their countries. We will make agreements and concessions, but we will never have any legislation in there that says that people have to live that way. We will attempt to create legislation that helps us achieve certain goals, but it will always be things that are not inviolate of the Constitution or our country's essential virtues. So global treaties and working on a global stage are not a bad thing, and in no way do they affect or impact, I want to say, our ability to do things domestically. It does not have anything to do with nothing we do on a national stage. No treaty we do on a national stage is something that we do which enforces or infringes upon American people's rights and freedoms. If you're going to say I can't burn as much gas and poison the atmosphere as much as I would like, and that would be your grounds for being upset, I guess that's a weird hill to die on in that argument. But at the same time, we do have laws to a degree on so many things anyway, and we are not an anarchist society. Freedom does not come with the caveat of being able to be anarchist and just do whatever the hell you want anyway. So obviously there's always going to be some stipulations to that, and there very well should be. Otherwise, it's the purge. And while some people who are very confident in themselves think, hey, a purge would be a great idea, I would argue that one of the points of the purge is that a lot of people who think the purge is a great idea are also the people who get killed by the people who are in that. So, think about that. The first to raise their gun is often the first to die by the gun. That's why today's progressive left so cavalierly supports open borders despite the lawless humanitarian crisis their policy created. I knew we were going to get to this. Their policy created along America's southern border. Nobody on the left wants an open border. The definition being bandied about of open border is the idea that we want nobody checking anybody at the border. We don't want anybody to have to be stopped at the border. Everybody should just be allowed in, regardless. We don't want to have any judges. We don't want to have any definitions of asylum, blah, blah, blah. And I have not found one person on the left who wants that. Not one. Everybody, every last person on the left that I've ever spoken to, or who has been in conversations about this online or in videos about this, they all want the same thing. They all want us, one, to hopefully catch up on all of the backlog cases, and to do so in an effective and correct manner, not to just be like pencil whipping them through, but to do it correctly, which is why we want to hire more judges and advocates to have those cases done correctly, to get the background research done correctly, to get the information from those other nations on those individuals so that we can look at their backgrounds and verify whether or not they are criminals or bad people that we should not allow into our country, and to validate the authenticity of the claim of the asylum. And then to if they should be going to another country closer to home, we also want to facilitate that versus bringing them necessarily to America. One of the things that Kamala actually did was go to these other countries. When they talked about her being a border czar, she was not the border czar. That was not her fucking job. It was not an office. It wasn't a thing. It was something that somebody else called her, and it just somehow caught on, just like things do. But it neglected that what she was actually doing, what her mission was from the president, was to go to other countries like Mexico and these other countries between us and where a lot of people were coming from in South America. And it was to set up facilities so that people could either seek asylum in those countries, or they could begin the process of seeking asylum there instead of coming all the way here and then further making our system struggle as it is doing right now. Most people want, we do want a wall along parts of the border wherein it would be effective to have a wall. We do also want technology that makes more sense than just having just a wall, because obviously, for anybody keeping track, a lot of the wall just gets, even the steel areas, they just bring massive torches and cut their way through these areas, even the steel sections, and funnel people by the hundreds through those areas. So having a wall in and of itself isn't a solution. That was one of the arguments about, adding all this extra wall to areas where people, for the most part, aren't coming through, and where it would not stop it. Because you can add a wall to an area that's not very accessible, but the problem is if you're not constantly watching that wall, all you're doing is going, well, we're going to do this, but we're going to pay less attention to it now, most likely. And then they're just going to go, well, we're just going to start funneling more people over there then. Because now that you think it's even harder to get through and you're going to pay less attention to it, obviously we were able to get through the areas that you guys were already keeping an eye on and get a lot of people through over there. It makes more sense if you're going to be pay even less attention over here to just start, transitioning how we're doing things over there. So it's about creating, your own blind spots and being less effective that way. We don't want to do that. So we want to add technology to things. We want to have more effective border control. We want to have more agents. That's what the last border bill was. Had a lot of that stuff in there. I know a lot of, I had a conversation with my own parents, and I heard them say exactly the same things that I saw in so many I was Fox News. I saw it on Rogan. I saw it on a lot of different conservative things, but we wanted to do it the right way. No, we don't want to have all these judges because, it's not the right way. And and it was such a it's such a fighting the same war on both sides of the war because you just don't want a victory is what it felt like. But I don't think that's the case. I think people do want the victory. Again, I think this is a situation where conditioning people to have a position that they don't even necessarily fully understand. It's scary because it makes it harder to argue against that or to help people find the facts in that, because they don't even know that they're arguing on both sides of it. They're not thinking about that. They're just repeating the arguments that they're hearing because they've heard it so many times, and it feels logical at that point, but it's not logical. To have more judges, to be able to do things effectively, to fix the asylum rulings so that asylum makes more sense. The term asylum makes more sense. What qualifies asylum makes more sense. I think Biden opened it, the term temporarily. I'm not 100% sure. Like, let's see if I can find that real quick. Did Biden alter qualifications for asylum? Maybe the Immigration Council. Let's see, proposed regulation on asylum analysis. What the proposed regulation would do. The proposed regulation after screening interviews and asylum seekers entitled to the government's trying to discuss. There are two types of screening interviews: credible fear interview for people who would be eligible for asylum, reasonable fear interview, people who would be ineligible for asylum but might be eligible for lesser forms of protection to provide permanent residency solution to allow someone to stay in the country under 2023 regulation. Most asylum seekers who enter the U.S. between ports of entry are subject to a higher standard in the credible fear interviews. The proposed regulation affects each of these processes. Under current law, there are several potential bars to asylum that an asylum officer does not consider in a screening interview when deciding whether a person passes or fails. Instead, a person passes the interview. If a person passes the interview, it is the job of the immigration judge to consider whether these bars apply. The newly proposed regulation allows the asylum officer to consider some of these bars in their screening interview. The asylum officer does not have to consider the bars when making a decision. It's left up to their discretion. The bars that could not be considered. Okay, so are these the changes that he made? Whether the applicant engaged in persecution of other people, whether the applicant has been previously convicted of a serious... This would actually be furthering, making it harder to get in, not easier to get in. Whether the applicant committed a serious crime, whether the applicant posed a threat. Yeah, I haven't seen, and that was 24, I guess, so I would have to look further back. Biden makes asylum broader. Again, I'll tell you 2024 doubles down on asylum restrictions. Maybe if you go back, because I heard so many times that Biden made it easier to get in by making asylum broader. I haven't seen any legislation to support that. I would say that one of the reasons why asylum went up so much during Biden was that so many people were forced to stay in Mexico during the stay in Mexico legislation that was put into play by Trump. And Biden, working with Mexico, was trying to process those people into the United States. A lot of them were able to, were filing for asylum. So having that many people who, by the standard that we already had, kind of just building up and building up and building up and building up, and then having them all at one time coming in, obviously Biden's numbers were going to be much, much larger. To think that you would create essentially a dam, and then know that it was going to be there was going to be a term of expiration on that dam. And then when the dam opens up, go, well, look, yeah, but look, now there's a goddamn waterfall or a lake or whatever the case may be. Well, there's so much more water. Yes, That's how it works. You built a dam to stop water, knowing that the dam wasn't going to stay there for very long and that it was going to have a buildup of water behind it. So when it opened up, you would have more water. What did you think was going to happen with all those asylum seekers who were waiting? They were going to be able to just put their thing and then go back and then have to wait even longer? Mexico was just going to deal with that? No. Mexico is our neighbor to the south. We do have to still do right by them. And by the Stay in Mexico Act, we did do the correct thing by the legislation that was put into play by Mr. Trump himself. So I do think a lot of that was just people's misunderstanding of how all of that works. And it's important to understand that. So wanting more judges, wanting more people to be processed correctly, wanting the resources to be able to look into people's backgrounds across whatever countries that they're in, to be able to make that a faster process, because you need to hire more people who can get into contact with those organizations. We do have access to a lot of those records. Not that we can just like log into those systems, but we have access to the personnel in those countries who can access those systems and get us that information. And we can put more people into play in those countries to do that sort of thing with the funding. So that's what a lot of the money was for, was to try to get all of that done so that we could get through the process the correct way, the way that conservatives actually freaking want. But unfortunately, conservative media is trying to just dress it up in the worst way possible so that they can, push that narrative that they already have been pushing, that it was going to be terrible. So it's kind of nuts. The facts matter. The reality matters. Let's see. That's why today's progressive left so cavalierly supports open borders. Yeah, we just talked about that. To seek to purge the very concept of the nation state from the American ethos. No matter how much crime increases or resources drop for schools and hospitals, or wages decrease for the working class when wages are the highest they've ever been. Resources are dropping for schools, but you want to dismantle the Department of Education, which is not going to help that, considering how much federal money that distributes to the states for their schools. Oh, that's going to be disastrous, honestly. All this is just dumb. You can talk about resources dropping for hospitals, but again, that's, if you're going to talk about resources dropping for hospitals, you have to take into account also all the people who can't afford to pay a doctor or insurance for their doctor, even with the ACA. And so they have to do stuff for people that they know they're never going to get paid for, because the healthcare industry is a fucking vampire because of the insurance industry, which is a bigger vampire. And nobody wants to really have that talk about some kind of serious legislation to regulate the medical industry, because, again, they say too much government, but at the same time, without regulation, you completely enable the exact fucking monsters that are absolutely killing you. Let's see. Open borders activism is a classic example of what the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I'm assuming, called cheap grace, publicly promoting one's own virtue without risking any personal inconvenience. Indeed, the only direct impact of open borders on pro-open borders elitists is that the constant flow of illegal immigration suppresses the wages of their housekeepers, landscapers, and busboys. Don't forget your fruit pickers. The interesting thing about that is Donald Trump, for instance, had illegal people working at several of his places. Speaking of elitists, cutting their wage costs by hiring illegal immigrants. He was well known for a long time for having illegal immigrants working at his construction sites and not even following proper OSHA rules, because they're illegals and therefore not a big deal, right? The putting it all on the left while ignoring the fact that it does absolutely happen on the right. That elitists are a big portion of the right as well, as far as that goes. Just dumb. It's just dishonest, and it's just trying to create that division and say it's all the left when it's absolutely not just all the left. Did I hear a doorbell? One of these days, I got to put a thing in the living room. It's in the back of the house where nobody sits. So if you ever come to my house, don't ring my doorbell. If you see me in the living room, just knock on the door. I'll hear that, but I won't hear the doorbell. Cheap Grace aptly describes the left's love affair with environmental extremism. Those who suffer most from the policies environmentalism would have us enact are the aged, poor, and vulnerable. It is not a political cause, but a pseudo-religion meant to baptize liberals' ruthless pursuit of power in the holy water of environmental virtue. So this is where you're seeing influence from the coal and fossil fuel industries, because the environmental policies cost them more money, which is why they want to push whatever they can overseas. And they're saying that it's the liberal environmental efforts for the aged, poor, and vulnerable here. I don't know. I think Christ would agree that the aged, poor, and vulnerable are important people to take care of. Howsoever you treat the least of us and all that is how you treat me. So if you're treating them as if they're secondary to the profits of fossil fuel and oil, I think we have an issue with that. Yeah, I think anybody should have an issue with that. Why should you take these marginalized communities and I mean, you just talked about the fucking poor being treated as flyover states and marginalized because they're not elitist, and then you're saying at the same time that the environmental policies are strictly only for the aged, poor, and vulnerable, and it's a pseudo religion. While you're always talking about religious causes, I don't get it. Like when it's for your specific rich buddies, it's good, but they're not elitist. But when it's for the aged, poor, and vulnerable, then you're Christian values out the window. That's pseudo religion. To take care of those individuals because it cuts into the profit of these really rich people who are by in no way conservative elitists. Wink, wink. Like, come on, man. This is clearly conditioning. At its very heart, environmental extremism is decidedly anti-human. Stewardship and conservation are supplanted by population control and economic regression. Environmental ideologues would ban the fuels that run almost all of the world's cars, planes, factories, farms, and electricity grids. Abandoning confidence in human resilience and creativity in responding to the challenges of the future would raise impediments to the most meaningful human activities. They would stand human affairs on their head, regarding human activity itself as fundamentally a threat to be sacrificed to the God of nature. Yeah, obviously everybody wants to move where we get energy from to a much more green aspect in the future. Nobody on the left that I'm aware of is saying cut it all coal and fossil fuel today, but we have to move toward that. Sooner or later, these forms of fuel that are not renewable are going to peter out. Now, how long that's going to take is anybody's real guess. We've only dug so far into the Earth's surface. Obviously, there's tons and tons of surface below us, but the further we dig, the more unstable the surface becomes. We are seeing sinkholes and everything opening up constantly from old mining. It's been, 100 years since some of those mines were closed, if not longer. But obviously, we're suffering some of those impacts now. And as we go deeper and bigger, obviously, we're going to see stuff like that in the future, meaning that we're going to have to try to collapse things along the way and resurface things so that we can still have some kind of firm earth underneath it. Is that just my brain? I will be right back. I'm going to go check my door. Make sure that might be you. Well, take care of your business. Nope. Just something ringing in my ear, maybe. All right. At its very heart, environmental extremism is decidedly anti-human. Stewardship and conservation are supplanted by population control and economic regression. Environmental ideologues would ban... Okay, we did that part. They would stand human affairs in their head regarding human activity itself as fundamentally a threat to be sacrificed to the God of nature. As opposed to the God of oil, I guess. I don't know. The same goals are the heart of elite support for economic globalization. For 30 years, America's political, economic, and cultural leaders embraced and enriched Communist China and its genocidal Communist Party while hollowing out America's industrial base. What may have started out with good intentions has now been made clear. Unfettered trade with China has been a catastrophe. It has made a handful of American corporations enormously profitable while twisting their business incentives away from the American people's needs. For a generation, politicians of both parties promised that engagement with Beijing would grow our economy while injecting American values into China. The opposite has happened. American factories have closed. Jobs have been outsourced. Our manufacturing economy has been financialized. And all along, the corporations profiting failed to export our values of human rights and freedom. Rather, they imported China's anti-American values into their C-suites. What's a C-suite? Let's see. Executive level managers within a company. Oh, like CFO, CEO. Okay, I get it. The chief officers of these different areas of their company. Interesting. So trade with China has always been a big deal. Trade with Japan has always been a big deal because they produce things much cheaper than we do here, because they have absolutely fucking monstrous laws regarding labor and production and their environment. The exact things that the conservative agenda here is arguing for, which is to create monstrous environmental laws here that allow poisoning our environment for profit, that we should have lower labor costs, even though we should somehow have higher wages here. I don't know. Like, again, you're arguing two different things that just can't both exist. You have to stand on one side or the other. The reason so many American factories closed and went to China was because it was cheaper to frickin' produce it over there and send it over here. While being a guy who owns it, you can be an American citizen, you just own it over there. And we don't have the tax code to tax them for the profits that they are making overseas. That's just not how we've been able to do it. I believe it's been proposed, but it has been shot down again and again because people say that it would be illegal to charge them taxes on profits that they're making overseas, even though they're American citizens who are outsourcing those jobs to another country. And they're doing it because they can poison the environment over there. They can hire children and run sweatshops, effectively paying people $1 an hour to do something that over here would cost you would have to pay factory workers, $12 to $15 an hour bare minimum to start. And some of these things, and so they're making a fortune doing that, because in volume, it's way more cost effective in volume to do that there and ship it over here than it would ever be to produce here and then distribute to the rest of the world, and even within domestic areas. So that they're doing it much cheaper that way. It has nothing to do with our trade agreement with China. It has everything to do with the fact that China has absolutely terrible laws about its environment and regulations on factories and businesses and on labor. If China were to fix those things, that would send jobs back over here. The way you get jobs back over here from those companies is to have China regulate those things, to get fair wages in China, and to get environmental acts in China that would protect that and enforce them to upgrade their factories and stop poisoning things, stop using harmful chemicals, all of that. If you can get that done over there, it's no longer as lucrative for these businesses to send everything over there and then absolutely shit on everybody over here. So it has nothing to do with this nonsense that they're talking about here. It has everything to do with the fact that China just has absolutely terrible labor laws and terrible environmental regulations concerning businesses, and the fact that if I want to make 1 million widgets in America, I can make them here, and it will cost me $10 billion. But if I make 1 million widgets out of a factory in China, it'll cost me 1/10 of that, and then all of the rest of it is still my profit. So if you have to just change where your location is to increase your profit tenfold, you're going to do that. Nothing you can do in America is going to affect that as long as they can still do that over there. You can't, say, well, we'll just, you know, fuck over all of our workers here, fuck over our environment here, and just cater to businesses insanely, and shit on our people and our country to get businesses to come back here. That's a terrible idea. It's not effective. It's not going to work. So we can't do that. You can't blame China for it. Outside of the fact that they just have terrible, terrible fucking laws and they need to fix them. But you can't blame our administration for that because we can't write the laws for China. So if our companies are going to go over there either way, what we really need to do is to find a way to incentivize them as best we can. So the best thing we can do then, honestly, is to make the best trade deals we can with China to get the product over here as cheap as possible, so that while the businesses and the jobs and everything aren't here as much as they should be, we're not punishing the workers even further for not having all of that and strengthen our economy that way. This way creates the ability to have a lot of retail outlets that can buy those products cheap, so that the people who have less wages and economic power can still afford all those things, resell those things, make a trade economy based on that domestically. If we increase tariffs, we're going to impact the retail outlets. We're going to impact people who are doing, these private side gigs and sales gigs where they're getting a lot of those resources from China. And that's going to punish, again, more people here domestically, because the tariff gets paid here. It doesn't get paid by the Chinese exporter. It gets paid by the American importer. So tariffs is a terrible idea. All you're doing is punishing, again, more people domestically with their business and further reducing America's economic strength domestically. So I guess we're going to see that coming. I'm just going to do the third one today. We'll do number 4 another day. These are getting more detailed, and there's a lot more to talk about throughout them. Even before the rise of big tech, Wall Street ignored China's serial theft of American IP, intellectual property. It outright cheered the elimination of American manufacturing jobs, learned to code, they would gloat. These were just the price of progress. Engagement was at every step Beijing's project, not America's. The Chinese Communist Party dictated terms, only to break them whenever it suited them. They stole our technology, spied on our people, and threatened our allies, all with trillions of dollars of wealth and military power financed by their access to our market. Interesting thing that they neglect to mention is that we don't have the legal or economic strength to threaten any country, for the most part, who takes any of our IP. If a country is out there using our IPs, say like our movies or something, and they're distributing them on their own, there's not a lot we can do about it. We would have to effectively remove their ability to tie into our internet and access any of that to start with. The only real way you have is you can try to do trade deals that punish them, or you can start a war with them. That's basically your two big ways of impacting other countries. You can try to make deals with other people around them that favor other people more than them, and challenge them economically that way. But when you're talking about somebody like China, and this is years ago, I was talking about how these trade deals that they were trying to do to punish China were a terrible idea, because China's economic power and global market impact is far stronger than America's. America's got a really strong consumer impact on the world, but it does not have a strong export market. We don't produce enough raw minerals and widgets, we'll say, to ship throughout the world to be able to like really threaten people by going, well, we're just not going to send you enough widgets anymore. And they're going to go, okay, well, I mean, it's just a widget. Somebody else can make a similar widget. It's not that hard. Once an idea is out there, most people can reverse engineer it and come up with at least a suitable version of it that can be adapted and sold. So, if you don't want to continue to sell us that one, that's absolutely, you're okay. But we're just not going to buy it, and we're just going to flood the market with our own version of it, and you're going to lose your market share in a lot of other places as well. So you just hurt yourself. You just shoot yourself in the foot with that. So it's really important to understand that. So came the rise of big tech, which is now less a contributor to the U.S. economy than it is a tool of Chinese government. Technology is a tool of Chinese government, even though we own Facebook, even though we own Twitter, even though we own Microsoft. I mean, Silicon Valley is here. I haven't heard of Silicon Beijing. I'm sure there's a version of that over there. But we have a massive amount of tech in America, and to pretend that we don't is dumb. We also have had proposals from chip manufacturing companies to build more chip manufacturing facilities in the U.S. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been pushed strong enough. I know Trump had been in talks with Foxconn to build a facility here in Wisconsin, in I think Milwaukee, and that just didn't go through. They bought a bunch of land, but did absolutely nothing and hired nobody. It was a massive land grab out of civilian hands, where they no longer own homes in those areas. All those homes got taken away from them and bulldozed over and sold to China. So if you're angry with China, Trump, ask him why he's making deals to sell American land to China and not getting the jobs that were promised. That would be the problem. And don't just blame China, because, obviously he had a hand in that. A big hand, big golden shovel it was, breaking ground there. They hand over sensitive intellectual property with military and intelligence applications to keep the money rolling in. They let Beijing censor Chinese users on their platform. They let the CCP set their corporate policies about mobile apps, and they run interference for our rivals' political priorities in Washington. One side of big tech companies' business model is old-fashioned American competitiveness and world-changing technological innovation, but increasingly, that side of these businesses is overshadowed by their role as operatives in the lucrative employ of America's most dangerous international enemy. If you want to understand the danger posed by a collaborative between big tech and the CCP, look no further than TikTok, the highly addictive video app used by 80 million Americans every month and overwhelmingly popular among teenage girls. Is in fact a tool of Chinese espionage. The ties between TikTok and the Chinese government are not loose, and they're not coincidental. I would add to that, as somebody who worked very, very much in tech and the military, that any information you put out there, I mean, it is not hard. If I wanted to scrape information about people, I could probably have a bot created pretty easily that is going to scrape several social media sites and get most of your information very, very easily without ever having to argue with a single thing. I can create several different Facebook. Some people are picky, or these different viral posts where you're going to volunteer information not thinking about it and scrape a lot of your personal information from that. And with all that information, I have your birth date. I've got, your mother's maiden name. I've got the names of your pets. I've got information about, your life, just in general, where you went to school. I got all kinds of information that you'd never thought was out there. You didn't put in a lot of these fields, but you've put in at different times. And it's not hard to scrape and find all that information. So to think that somebody needs a specific app to do things, and it's all in video format, that would be easier. It's actually harder to get all of that information through videos than it is to just get it through all the text that you put through all these American apps. And anybody could scrape that. You could do it from Russia. You could do it from China. You could do it from France. You could do it from South Africa, Uruguay, wherever the case may be. You don't need to be in a specific network even to do any of those things. This was a red herring, which is, they wanted you to look at this and be angry with something, but they didn't even understand it. You could actually look at, there's apps and there's networks that you can control. You can even add, you can check your DNS on advanced routers and see where all of your packets are going. I mean, this just wasn't the threat that they proposed that it was going to be. China does not give a shit about your TikTok videos. The guy who owned it was not from China. He was it Taiwan, I believe it was, or something like that. And at the hearing, he was just like, "What are you talking about? This is not the case. I'm not from there. it's just somebody trying to make these illusions, and it's ridiculous. Same can be observed of many U.S. colleges and universities through the CCP's Confucius Institutes. Beijing has been just as successful at compromising and co-opting our higher education system as they have been at compromising and co-opting corporate America. Again, we're neglecting Russia's influence in all of these things, which is very, very prevalent and has been documented by all of the intelligence agencies and has been spoken about publicly. And for some odd reason, the Conservative Party right now, and I guess my thought process is if it's that clear and apparent and has been on the world stage, and they admitted on Russian state fucking TV, and they don't allude to it. They literally fucking state that they're doing this and that Americans are talking about it and they're laughing about it because honestly, the GOP is just like, no, it's not happening. And they're like, yeah, we have them. They're absolutely covering for us. They're absolutely, helping us do this. So the fact that they can be on state TV doing this, and we have all the information to prove that they're absolutely fucking they're engaged in all of this, and the Conservative Party just is absolutely just ignoring that fact like it doesn't fucking exist. That's scary. That's messed up. That should be a huge that should be a flea on your back, conservatives. You guys should be really fucking angry about that one. You should demand a lot better of the people that you're talking about, because they're telling you to be angry at all of this, but at the same time, they're completely avoiding anything to do with Russia. Fucking hold them accountable, dudes. You know Russia is doing this stuff. I know you do. You and I both fucking know you do. So hold these guys accountable, and let's be honest. Let's be absolutely honest with it. It is absolutely happening. We have all the evidence that it's happening. It's all been reported out there. Russia submitted it repeatedly on state TV in Russia. So let's stop fucking dancing around that and pretending like it's all China, because China really the anger here is that China's got all these jobs and these companies have moved to China. And what they're neglecting to mention is that a lot of those people are fucking conservative elitists. Trump and his family have several factories in China, and they're looking to expand in the future in China. So you can't act on one hand like you have all these issues with these specific things while being the people who are doing these specific things. This is just them trying to get you to look at the right hand while the left hand is doing the actual fucking trick, right? A casual reader might take the last few pages as surveying a broad array of challenges facing the American people and the next conservative president: supranational policy making, border security, globalization, engagement with China, manufacturing, big tech, and Beijing compromised colleges. But these are really not many issues, but two: that China is a totalitarian enemy of the United States, not a strategic partner or fair competitor, and that America's elites have betrayed the American people. The solution to all of the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems most are not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the tree's root and branch. International organizations and agreements that erode our Constitution, rule of law, or popular sovereignty should not be reformed. They should be abandoned. Illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated. The border sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored, not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Wow, we're going back to the 1950s red state, aren't we? Where we're just going to exchange the Soviet Union for the Chinese countries. And I guess that's going to be easy because now we already have all the pamphlets and flyers and propaganda. All we have to do is change, the pictures from a Russian or Soviet flag to a Chinese flag, and stop seeing Soviets, and we can just change it to the Chinese. And hey, it's all red still, so we're going to save money on that, right? This is fucking insane. If you end all economic agreements with China's and engagement with China, We don't have the infrastructure economically to fucking do that. If we did that today, we would devastate our country. There would be millions of jobs lost. We would have a huge struggle with food because we don't produce enough food in our country for all of our people. Holy Christ, there would be just, it would be absolutely devastating. The dollar would be thrown into the fucking garbage. You would be burning it because it would be worth more to burn than it would be to spend it or save it. Just that's insanity to think that we should just completely end any economic engagement with China and not now try to fix it. Holy Christ. But that's where we're at with this. This is a completely radical concept from radicalized people with a very specific agenda. And for anybody who's going to say out there, and I've been hearing this from people, is that the GOP does not agree with this. This is not where they're going to go with things. They did a lot of stuff from the Heritage fucking Foundation in Trump's first term. They thought they were going to get a second term to do a lot more. They didn't then, but they're going to now. So now the question becomes, how much of this is going to be enacted? Why do you think some of the classic Republicans who didn't want to deal with the Heritage Foundation for so many years, why they're suddenly freaking out about Trump? People that everybody thought was completely on board with Trump for the longest fucking time are suddenly going, who even defended Trump and saying that, obviously the Project 2025 is bullshit. You got people like Mitch McConnell and shit now who, with Trump's cabinet picks, who are fucking part of this, are going, holy shit. No, it really is fucking real. They really are going to do some of this shit. They're really going to attempt to do a lot of this crap and become isolationists and all this crap. And they're living in a fantasy fucking world. So you got all these major conservatives who are finally seeing that these MAGA fucking people are actually the Tea Party people that they were worried about before. They're the Heritage Foundation fucking people that have been existing forever. And it really is fucking scary. So it needs to be something that people really fucking wake up to. When your leaders that you looked up to for so long, and as the authorities of your fucking party, people who you just held in the highest regard, are suddenly raising huge alarms, that should absolutely be like making you go, wait a minute. If this guy's this worried about this suddenly, if he was on board with this the whole time and he was going like, nah, it's not going to happen. Well, we got this in check. It's just not the case. I don't believe for a second. Holy shit. And he's suddenly raising the alarm and everything. That should be like making you freak out. That should be making you go, wait a minute. This is maybe not okay. Maybe there's a lot more to this than I thought there was. You definitely need to be concerned going forward, because your leadership is telling you without saying it out loud. They're saying it with actions. They're saying it with what they're taking care of, and the fact that they're suddenly very, very alarmed about a lot of the things based on these actions that are in here. They're suddenly freaking out. You need to be freaking out too, because that is absolutely what's going on. So the next conservative president, we're just going to finish up this last paragraph and I'll let you guys go. The next conservative president should go beyond merely defending America's energy interests, but go on the offense, asserting them around the world. I don't know how you do that. America's vast reserves of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem. They are the lifeblood of economic growth. Like I pointed out, this was a love letter to the fossil fuel industry. They are the lifeblood of economic growth. American dominance of the global energy market would be a good thing for the world, and more importantly, for we the people. It's not just about jobs, even though unleashing domestic energy production, while we're drilling more than we ever have before and producing vastly more oil domestically than we ever have before, ever. Creates millions of them. It's not just about higher wages for workers who didn't go to college, though they would receive the raises they have missed out on for 2 generations. Full spectrum strategic energy dominance would facilitate the reinvigoration of America's entire industrial and manufacturing sector as we disentangle our economy from China. Globally, it would rebalance power away from dangerous regimes in Russia and the Middle East. It would build powerful alliances with fast-growing nations in Africa and provide the leverage to counter Chinese ambitions in South America and the Pacific. Locally, it would drive billions of dollars of private investment to the communities that have been hammered by globalization since the 90s, and it would clarify our intentions to Beijing that the next president can ensure that a large part of America's reindustrialization is in the production of the equipment that we will need to dissuade future foreign meddling with U.S. vital interests. Oh man, yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it's a lot of what I thought would be in there. It was very predictable for me. Not much was a surprise, which is why I was able to comment so easily on most of it. One of the things I would point out is that America's always had we've always spoken about what favors success in America and the American dream is innovation, the ability to think outside the box, to recognize problems within a system, and to find a way to fix that problem or to innovate and close those gaps or whatever the case may be. Obviously, a lot of jobs have been overseas. What I've seen in the last 15 to 20 years is a lot of people crying about factories that went overseas, and not a lot about how we fix that problem or innovate domestically to create situations here that we can still capitalize on here. Not everything has to be imported, absolutely not. So what can we do to innovate and facilitate growth here? Well, one of the things that we can do, and it's usually done through government assistance, through be it a tax credit for like starting businesses, grants for small business owners to build businesses here. Well, one of the problems that we have right now that stagnates that is a lot of the businesses, even the ones that are owned overseas, that are owned by Americans here, is that the stock is traded here locally, be it a subsidiary of the stock that's owned, the company that's in China. But the stock that's here and the money is here. So if you start a business here domestically and you start gaining any real ground with it, these companies come in the moment you go public. They buy up your stock and they shut you down. That stagnates the growth in America. And it should be something that the FTC and the SEC are looking into and preventing from happening. But unfortunately, it's technically free market on the stock exchange, and there's technically no regulation against that. Now, whether or not those organizations could create rules for that, or whether or not it would be the government who could create legislation for that, and we would have to understand that while it's not in the entire interest of completely free market, it's also it's preventing the anarchism of the free market, the same way we prevent anarchism of actions that people do in their everyday life. So, there definitely needs to be some regulation toward that. We need to figure out a way to prevent the stock market from opening these very wealthy people and elitists from absolutely crushing these small businesses the moment they go public, just because they're in competition. And we need to find a way to give these smaller businesses enough capital that they can begin to compete on a larger market. Because if you can't compete on a large enough market, let's say I always gave this example about, like, if I win the lottery and I had $1 billion, I win the lottery and I get $1 billion after everything. So after all my taxes and everything, I just took a lump sum, got $1 billion. If I wanted to buy a bar in any fucking city, I could start a nightclub, and I could absolutely devastate every other club in the area by just basically giving away the alcohol. I'm sure there would be some state mandated fucking regulations that say, hey, you have to charge at least this much. You can't go under it like with gas stations. Gas stations all have a certain amount that they have to charge by law. They can't change how much you're charging from day to day by regulations. So there's a lot of that going on there, and maybe they institute that locally, but a lot of places don't. So I would be able to effectively decide how much I want to just give away my beer for, my alcohol for, and I could drive every other bar out of business just because they can't compete with me being willing to throw away, $200,000 in product every year just because I can, and shut them all down. And then once they're all down, I can charge whatever I want because I have no competition. We see a lot of that go on in America, and it's business manipulation. It's absolutely terrible. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't happen. Cats are fucking weird. All right. that's all I got for you guys today. Next episode, we will go into promise number 4, securing our God-given individual right to enjoy the blessings of liberty, which God only knows what that is. I'm going to go stop my cats from beating each other up now. You guys have a great day.